Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text 33. Translation. With devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. The laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can be easily meditated upon. When the Supreme Lord is laughing, one can see his small teeth, which resemble jasmine buds rendered rosy by the splendor of his lips. Once devoting his mind to this, the yogi should no longer desire to see anything else. Purport. It is recommended that the yogi visualize the laughter of the Lord after studying his smile very carefully. These particular descriptions of meditation on the smile, laughter, face, lips, and teeth all indicate conclusively that God is not impersonal. It is described herein that one should meditate on the laughter or smiling of Vishnu. There is no other activity that can completely cleanse the heart of the devotee. The exceptional beauty of the laughter of Lord Vishnu is that when he smiles, his small teeth, which resemble the buds of jasmine flowers, at once become reddish, reflecting his rosy lips. If the yogi is able to place the beautiful face of the Lord in the core of his heart, he will be completely satisfied. In other words, when one is absorbed in seeing the beauty of the Lord within himself, the material affection or attraction can no longer disturb him. Janayanam prohasitam bahuladaroshta pasarunaita tanu dvijakunda punkti jayat sudeha kuhure pasitasya vishnor bhaktya ajhayapitamana napratag didrikshat. With devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. The laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can be easily meditated upon. When the Supreme Lord is laughing, one can see his small teeth, which resemble jasmine buds rendered rosy by the splendor of his lips. Once devoting his mind to this, the yogi should no longer desire to see anything else. So, once one begins to get a realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this creates a situation whereupon one actually has the opportunity to meditate upon the Lord as one likes. One, within the heart, he's yogi. So, being yogi, he may meditate in a particular fashion according to his process. And here Lord Kapila is recommending in this yoga process to meditate on the form of the Lord. One may also meditate on the form of the Lord within the mind. There are different forms of the Lord. Deities, Archamurtis, Archavigraha, which may be realized in different ways. One may have the form of the Lord who is appearing within stone or wood or metal or paint or even sand. Some of these forms are permanent. They are meant to be installed. Ooh, if that goes in the earphones, that must really hurt. Some of these forms of the Lord are permanent, and they are installed. There's just like we have installed Shri Shri Gandharvika Giridhari. we have installed. They came because they wanted to. We simply requested if they could please come. So they decided that they would come, and we tried to render some service to them. So the form of the Lord is that form which the Lord himself accepts. So that form may also appear within the mind. Forms of the Lord which are within, for instance, sand. That is temporary. The devotee may call the Lord to appear in this form by installation process. Then when he's finished with his worship, because he cannot maintain that form of the Lord due to the fact that he's very poor, then he will ask the Lord if he could kindly leave that form because it is not fitting for him to remain there. So it's temporary form of the Lord. We worship the permanent forms because we are not poor. Rich men's sons are not poor. So we are the sons of Krishna, so we are not poor. So anyway, being not poor, we worship the permanent form of the Lord in very opulent temples, or attempting to be very opulent temples. Then, the yogi, his ability to worship the permanent form of the Lord when he's performing the mystic yogic practice is not very great, because he's living in the mountains. He's very much detached from all aspects of the material existence. Therefore, he has no opulence, he has no temple. So he may accept temporary form of the Lord installed within the mind. Now one may ask, well, why must that form be temporary? Well, actually, within the heart of the pure devotee, he's not temporary. But once one engages in such steady worship of the Lord within the mind, he comes to the point where he worships the Lord in his original form. He worships the Lord in a form where the Lord resides in the spiritual world, in one of the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, he transfers his worship from the mind, or the Murti in the mind, to the Lord himself, personally, who is living in the Vaikuntha Loka. This is actually explained in the next verse. Text 34. Evam harao bhagavati pratilabdha bhavo bhakjadravad vidhaya utpulaka pramodat outkantya bashpa kalaya muhur arjamanas tachchapi chitta bodhisham shanakaya viyunkte. By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs of his body stand erect through excessive joy, and he is constantly bathed in a stream of tears occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity. Purport. Here it is clearly mentioned that meditation, which is an action of the mind, is not the perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. In the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the higher stages, there is no question of using the mind. A devotee becomes accustomed to serving the Lord by purification of his senses. In other words, the yoga principles of meditation are required as long as one is not situated in pure devotional service. The mind is used to purify the senses, but when the senses are purified by meditation, there is no need to sit in a particular place and try to meditate upon the form of the Lord. One becomes so habituated that he automatically engages in the personal service of the Lord. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga, or lifeless yoga. But the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga, or lifeless yoga, for the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord. But when he is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called sabija yoga, or living yoga. One has to be promoted to the platform of living yoga. One should engage in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. The stage of premanjana churita can be attained by developing complete love. When one's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service is fully developed, one sees the Lord, even without artificially meditating on his form. His vision is divine because he has no other engagement. At this stage of spiritual realization, it is not necessary to engage the mind artificially. Since the meditation recommended in the lower stages is a means to come to the platform of devotional service, those already engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are above such meditation. This stage of perfection is called Krishna consciousness. In other words, that the living entity engaged in the yogic practice has to accept a form of the Lord within his mind by a process of meditation which is called artificial. Now, artificial does not mean fake or imitation, but in this sense it means something which is not naturally there and has to be brought in or created. Artificial also has that method of understanding. For instance, an artificial element. We create some element out of chemicals, which is not naturally there. So, the elements which are naturally there are within the heart. Krishna is also within the heart. The yogi, in mature devotion or mature meditation, he may observe the form of the Lord. But as Prabhupada says, here it is clearly mentioned, which is that meditation, which is an action of the mind, is not the perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. Meditation requires that you meditate upon something. And that action of meditating upon something is not samadhi because it is not natural. It is something you have to do. It is something which is not naturally happening. But in samadhi, there's no question of have to. Have to meditate upon the Lord. In samadhi, naturally one will meditate upon the Lord, and there's no other question. There's no other existence that one could do. But in meditative process, one has to do. He has to meditate in a particular way upon the Lord. Even when he's meditating on the laughter or smiling of the Lord, that is something which he must concentrate on and consciously do. Therefore, it is not the stage yet of pure absorption in the form of the Lord. Although it is extremely highly elevated, it is not yet the stage of samadhi. Real samadhi means when one is fully absorbed in the object, his most worshipable and lovable object. What does absorbed mean? Does it mean merged? But absorbed does not necessarily mean merged. It's like when you have a sponge and you absorb water. Does that mean the water has merged in the sponge? No. Something which is merged can never again be extracted in that particular form. Water, you can just squeeze the sponge and there's the water again. Absorbed in Krishna means that one's mind flows to Krishna, one's senses flow to Krishna, one's heart and desires all flow to Krishna, just as the Ganges is flowing to the sea. It is natural flow. It is not something which can be halted by any means whatsoever. For every means or every action which takes place becomes an impetus for further becoming absorbed in Krishna. If things are not very nice, then one flows towards Krishna, requesting Krishna to protect him. If things are very nice, then one flows towards Krishna, thanking Krishna very much for making everything very nice. In other words, all situations, all circumstances, everything is an impetus for the devotee to increase his love of Godhead. That is when one is in love, pure love of Krishna. Everything is flowing towards Krishna. All his mind, faith, and refuge, all resting within the Supreme. Everything is there. He's just simply thinking of Krishna and nothing else. That is a state which is not artificial and does not have to be maintained by meditative process. It is a state which comes automatically and which springs automatically from the spiritual platform of the heart. That state is the state of Krishna consciousness. Until one comes to that state of Krishna consciousness, in some degree or another, he must engage his mind forcibly. He must remain strictly within some process or procedure which forces the mind, the heart, the intelligence, the senses to stay on the path of trying to attain Krishna. In other words, until you're safely situated at the lotus feet of the Lord, and there's no possibility of any other entry of mind, or intelligence, or activity onto any other platform, one must stay within the confines of the process of the bhakti yoga. Does that mean when one is more advanced, he can give up bhakti yoga completely? As some sahajas or speculators think? No, of course not. Then it means the rules and regulations no longer have any value. Even morning baths, you can say bye-bye. Oblations here and there. All yogic performances, all other prescribed functions no longer required. Does that mean then that then one can go out and really enjoy? Yes, because you can really enjoy Krishna. But one will never have any connection with material activity from that point on. He will simply be flowing towards Krishna, attracted towards Krishna like iron is attracted to magnet. And there's no other question. Therefore, for such a person, there's no need of a process or procedure or regulative principle. He's already got the perfection of all regulative principle. He's already simply, totally, completely absorbed in Krishna. That is the perfection of all regulative principles. Smartavya satatam vishnur vismartavya najatuchit. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is the topmost regulative principle. And if one is doing like this, then all other regulative principles become subordinate to that one. So this is a very highly elevated platform. And it's not a platform which can be attained by speculating. Therefore, until one gets to that platform where he is 100% Krishna conscious, one has to follow strictly all the principles of the bhakti process. Therefore, the process of bhakti yoga is one which encompasses both the neophyte stage and the Paramahamsa stage, the supreme advanced stage. That is a very nice process. It allows one to act both on the most neophyte platform and the highest transcendental platform in the same process. The same mantra is there for both the complete neophyte and the absolute Paramahamsa. They both chant the same exact mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of course, there is an enormous difference between the chanting of the neophyte and the chanting of the Paramahamsa. The chanting of the neophyte will barely be able to purify the neophyte. Because the neophyte, being even unable to hear the chanting, sets up some block to keep it from entering in the ear and entering to the heart. But even the steel-like cement-coated ears can be gradually dented, and the holy name forces his way through such coverings gradually to the heart and elevates that neophyte gradually to the topmost stage of transcendental perfection. For those who are of the Paramahamsa class, their chanting purifies the universe. So the quality of the chanting is different, but the chanting itself is the same. Similarly, both the neophyte or the Paramahamsa can sometimes, by the mercy of the pujaris, see the beautiful form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and sometimes not. Always when you're just about to get to that point where you're just about to bring everybody back to Krishna, then they close the curtain. It's like mystic. They always do it. I think they sit there, the two of these guys, and they just make a plan. All right, now he's about to talk about Krishna. Shut the curtain. After a while, it really gets frustrating. It just gets frustrating. So, when you sometimes see Krishna, when the neophyte sees Krishna, for him, he sees, maybe he doesn't see anything. Maybe he just sees some colors. He hasn't even been able to figure out there's deities there. That's possible. He looks at the altar, he sees flowers, he sees things. He sees also something. He's not even sure what he's looking at. Complete neophyte. And then if he sees the form of the deity, then he thinks, oh, statues. But then he wonders why they don't really look like statues. There's something special about these statues. The neophyte platform. Paramahamsa platform, he sees Krishna. And Krishna seeing him. And they are looking at each other. It is not that the devotee simply sees Krishna. No, but Krishna also sees him. And they are looking at each other. Ha, karma. Krishna sees the devotee. And the devotee sees Krishna. That is the topmost platform. They are reciprocating in that way. That is a very highly elevated platform. So the same process is there, taking darshan of the deity. But it is completely different quality. Just like we have often spoken about the cooking department. If the neophyte cooks and offers to Krishna, that is all right. But when the Paramahamsa cooks and offers to Krishna, that offering becomes like pure nectar. And anyone who takes it, their heart becomes inspired in transcendental love of Godhead. They can't stop chanting. Their hairs stand on end in ecstasy as they're eating. The whole atmosphere is transformed. Every single activity there is in Krishna consciousness may be performed by a neophyte on a very neophyte platform. And that is all right. That is within the boundaries of this process. Or it may also be performed by the most highly elevated soul. And that is very all right. Or it may be performed by somebody at any other stage in between. Therefore, this bhakti process is perfect because it allows one to have a shelter at every single moment of his development, from the most neophyte to the most advanced. This is not at all true of any other process of yoga. Just like you take the mystic process of yoga. The neophyte won't even look at it. If he hears about the austerity he has to perform just to qualify himself to sit down, he won't do it. What's to attract him? Just like, why do we, who all come from malecha backgrounds, eating all kinds of nonsense things, isn't it? Why do we give up these nonsense things? Well, because they give us prasadam. And prasadam tastes so good, one says, who cares about these other things? They didn't really taste so good anyway. Just like one person was asking, how do I give up cigarette smoking? I said, you just come and join the temple. Same day you'll give it up and never think about it again. If you actually take up this process in the temple, absorb yourself in Krishna consciousness, even you are a 4-pack a day man, you won't think about it again. Of course, if one gives up or doesn't accept the process fully, that's another thing. But one who fully absorbs, we have seen, some devotees were telling us how they were so much attached to this nasty habit of choking themselves and calling this pleasure. And they said that when we came and joined, immediately we could give up this nonsense and didn't think about it anymore. Many of you may have the same experience here. Yes. So, we find that because there is something very nice to take, the lower taste may be quickly given up. Prabhupada used the example, if I have my hand full of rocks and somebody offers me diamonds, well, I cannot take the diamonds because the rocks are there. An intelligent person immediately throws away the rocks and grabs the diamonds because the diamonds are so much more valuable than the rocks. A fool, he thinks these rocks are very nice and doesn't understand the value of diamonds. So the Krishna conscious process is like that. It gives one something so much nicer that he no longer requires to keep these old things. Just like when you're dealing with a child, and the child has got something which is dangerous in its hands, like a knife or something like this. So then you say, give the knife. And the child says, no. But come on, give the knife. You're going to hurt yourself. So then you have to take something nice and give it to, here, have a piece of candy. And the child goes, ooh, drops the knife, grabs the candy. Then you take it away. This is psychology. So, although we, who are on the so-called more advanced intellectual platform, although we, who are so-called sophisticated adults, are approached with the process of self-realization, if it looks to be a process of austerity, everybody says no thanks. It's like if the yoga process were described with all of its very austere, difficult, troubling methods, everybody says no thank you, because it's too much trouble. But in bhakti, although there's definite austerity on all levels, but because there's so much given, it doesn't matter. The person doesn't care to give up his former things because he's getting so much in return, which is of a higher taste. Furthermore, even you're not a neophyte in the yoga practice. Let us say you have managed to somehow, from previous lifetimes, gotten to the point where you don't mind the austerity necessary. And let's say you are engaged in the yogic process. But still, one may not be able to tolerate the mental or intellectual adjustments that one has to make to actually get to the point of withdrawal from this material world. That may either be beyond him completely or may frighten him in different ways. When one actually contemplates the amount of renunciation that one has to come to. And one may also contemplate the fact that if he doesn't finish the process, he gets nothing in return. If he doesn't get to the end result of leaving the body by his own will, and establishing himself in Brahman or something like this, then he gets nothing. And he gets very frustrated. Therefore, that process is one which is not applicable for everybody at all times. And in fact, it only starts to really become attractive for one who's capable of complete withdrawal from the material world, and one who's capable of actually coming to the point of departing from his body at his will in mystic process. Then it's very attractive for a certain class. Because then they can depart from the material world and situate themselves in the spiritual world. But the bhakti process does not require such a commitment immediately. In fact, who even knows in the beginning how much he will have to commit to Krishna? Because who even knows how much there is there already to commit? We don't even have the faintest idea of our own selves. We don't even understand what our spiritual nature is. We don't understand how much we've got within us to offer to Krishna. We don't even understand there is something within us to offer to Krishna. In the most neophyte platform, one knows, I'm suffering, I've got to get out of this suffering condition. Ooh, this Krishna consciousness makes me feel very good transcendentally, very nice, I like that. One hasn't even gotten to the point of knowing that he's got to offer everything to Krishna. Yeah. Even you tell him, give up everything for Krishna. But it's so pleasant, he doesn't even understand what that means. He doesn't take that to be something bad. Give up what? Give up everything? Everything? You mean everything? I keep nothing for myself? Everything for Krishna? What? He never even asks like that. We don't find devotees lamenting like that. The devotee laments, oh, why can't I surrender everything to Krishna? He never laments, oh, I've got to give everything to Krishna. Actually, we've never heard this kind of lamentation. The lamentation we hear is, why can't I surrender everything to Krishna? Why do I remain so attached in the material world? We don't find the lamentation, oh, surrender everything to Krishna. Oy, boy, that's a little too much for me. Yeah. Only maybe in the persons who don't come to Krishna consciousness. Those who are within Krishna conscious process, they see so much is being given to them. They don't mind surrendering more and more and more. In fact, because the more you surrender, the more you get. Even if you're a materialist, that sounds good. The more you give, the more you get. Good business. Therefore, let's just keep giving, get more and more and more. Hey, that's okay. I don't mind that. What one hears, you give everything, get nothing. For a while, maybe later you get something. Yeah. That's the mystic process. Ooh. Well, that's not so attractive. That's like investing. You give everything, and maybe in 800 years, you'll get the return if the market didn't crash in the meantime. So, that's tough. Yeah. Thinking like that, that's really tough. But in Krishna consciousness, there's an immediate reciprocation. It's not like an investment where you invest something and then later on there's a possibility you'll get something. No. We don't say, work now, enjoy later. We are getting the bliss immediately. Of course, we do say work now, samadhi later. That is another thing. But we do not say no enjoyment now. We are getting immediate reciprocation. We don't have to wait. Just like the communists, they complain about the tape's off. The communists, they complain about the fact that they say, you religionists, wait, don't put it up. You religionists, you are working so hard, and then these churches, they are just manipulating you, and they tell you, at the end, then you'll get some enjoyment. No, we do not do like that. We do not say, okay, later on, then you'll get some enjoyment. In the meantime, we exploit you and you give everything to the church and we spend all the money. No. We never say like that. Is that going in there too? That boop boop? No, I guess not. So, we say, yes, you work for Krishna now. And now you get the result. Just like when we go out on the Sankirtan mission and we are chanting in the street. We don't, all right, now we chant in the street. Oh, this miserable. Look at all those people looking at us. Ooh. And here we are, have to dance here in the street. Ooh, how terrible. And nobody says like that. But then we're thinking, oh, it's so terrible now. But don't worry. In 5 years from now, if I continue doing this, then I'll be blissful that day. No, this is not at all the process. We are chanting in the street. Immediately you feel the result. Unless you are a dull stone, you immediately feel the result. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's got enough courage to go out on a chanting party, from the beginning, that is, you need a little courage. After that, no courage. You just do it. It's wonderful. But in the very, very beginning, one may feel a little bit strange. That, oh, here I have to stand out here on the street, chant Hare Krishna, and all these people are looking at me. We have seen first-timers going out on the street for chanting on the street Hare Krishna mantra. In the beginning, they're really timid. They hide in the back, sometimes put a hood over their head or something. Looking around, who's looking at me? And oh no, what do they think this and what do they think that? So, by the end of that kirtan, they're chanting and dancing, and then you ask them, aren't you worried about what the people think? Who cares? So we have seen this practically, that there is an immediate reciprocation there. That is what makes Krishna conscious process successful. That's why people even join, because they get that taste. Everybody gets somehow some taste immediately. Now the big question is, why is it that sometimes the taste goes away? That is a good question. And that is a relevant question. Why would the taste go away? Well, what's the obvious answer? Because one's no longer performing the process. One may be dressed like a devotee or acting like one, but not engaged in the process. He may not be chanting Hare Krishna. He may not even be chanting. Sometimes people think, oh, anyway, I can just work hard. Or even I can just preach all day. I don't have to chant Hare Krishna. I don't have to chant my 16 rounds. That's for neophytes. No, as soon as you don't chant your 16 rounds, immediately one is in a fallen condition. Or one thinks, oh, I don't require the program. I don't need to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. I already know this philosophy. I've already heard this point. Most of the points we've said in this class, everybody's already heard. Whether we remember it, that's another thing. And whether we understand it, that's quite another thing. Whether we realize it, that's yet another thing. Therefore, we hear every day, even though it may be in austerity. Who said there was no austerity? There's definitely austerity in Krishna consciousness, but it's not big austerity. Just like the austerity of having the curtain closed. After a while, it will also open. And one may see Krishna again by the causeless mercy of the pujaris. There is austerity in Krishna consciousness. We never said there was no austerity, but it's an austerity that one would like to take, because it is not a painful austerity. And one who comes to the program finds himself to become Krishna conscious. One who does not come finds himself to not be so Krishna conscious. Automatic result. Those who always follow the program are always strong in Krishna consciousness. Those who don't always follow the program always have troubles in Krishna consciousness. Now, even if one always follows the program, there's a possibility that there's some lack of taste. Why? Another reason. Offenses. If one commits offenses against devotees, then he gradually loses his taste in Krishna consciousness. If one insults Vaishnavas or tries to criticize or chastise Vaishnavas who are not to be criticized, then one starts to lose his taste in Krishna consciousness. One who criticizes for the right reason may not lose his taste, but that is dangerous, and one must know what he's doing. Prabhupada personally told me that you may criticize if you're right, but if you're wrong, then you may get into big trouble. And besides that, there's so many things you can criticize. You can even criticize the sun for having sunspots. So one may criticize anything. Better to try to avoid that situation as much as possible. Then one stays blissful. Unless one is, of course, in a leading position, he must criticize his subordinates to correct them. Spiritual master is actually a big fault finder because he finds fault all the time in his disciples and chastises them. You should not do like this, you should do like this. Yeah. It's unfortunate we have to be a fault finder. Actually, it's blissful. Generally, we don't like to be a fault finder, but when we find fault in those who like the fact that we are finding the fault, that's very good. Even in a disciple who does not like the fact that fault is being found in him, spiritual master will withdraw from even seeing the fault because he sees this person is too neophyte. You should not even see the fault, otherwise he will be agitated. Therefore, spiritual master will like to chastise those who like to be chastised. And that becomes a very loving exchange. And that is very nice. It becomes a way in which love is exchanged, that I'm showing you what's wrong, and you are taking that seriously and trying to correct. But if one is not in such a position and finds fault in others, then others will take it as a fault in oneself. And they will and thus also find fault. And everybody will find fault with everybody, and everything will go to hell. In that way, we also lose taste. Therefore, sometimes one has to just not see the fault, even though it's there. There's so many faults. I once explained to the managers that if I were to start criticizing all the time all the faults I would see immediately, everybody would go crazy and leave. Therefore, I have to make a plan to find fault in stages, in progressive stages. I will find so much fault one day and tell it. Then wait until that is corrected. Then I'll find some more fault. Not that the first day, immediately, we find 10 tons of faults and just throw them on you. You fool. Then one just goes crazy, thinks this is all mad. Therefore, we progressively find fault. Every day, there's another fault. This way it can be corrected. Or every week. It depends on how advanced you are. So one has to learn these kind of arts. Not that one always sees fault. In fact, most of the time, it's much better to see the good. Instead of look to the fault, look to the good. Krishna does like that. Krishna sees all the time that good that we are doing. And that he appreciates very much. Not that he's looking at the fault. If Krishna were looking at our faults, we'd be in big trouble. Because first of all, there's piles of them. And second of all, he sees all of them. Even the ones that we don't see, he knows about. Things which we think are wonderful in ourselves, Krishna knows exactly how they are faults within ourselves. But when we reciprocate with Krishna, Krishna does not keep putting the faults in front of us and beating us in the face. He sees whatever service we are doing, and he reciprocates with us in that way to encourage us more and more. He emphasizes the good things. And in that way, by taking up more and more good things in Krishna consciousness, then the faults gradually are diminished, little by little by little. That is why the process is to meditate on the form of the Lord. Because the more and more one meditates on the form of the Lord, the more that the faults within oneself become cleansed. This is the process of reflection, reflective purification. That when we are always seeing Krishna, then Krishna's beautiful transcendental form and effulgence purifies our dirty hearts. Just in the same way that very impure substances here, outside, when exposed to the sun, become purified. Even the most impure substances become purified in the sun in due course of time. Maybe it takes quite some time, maybe not so long time, but the sun purifies and does not become contaminated by that substance. Similarly, the vision and meditation on the form of the Lord purifies us so nicely. Then all of the faults become forgotten. All of the faults become forgotten. We, in fact, no longer have any contact with this faulty aspect of the material nature. We don't even have contact with the body anymore. We are only viewing the Supreme Lord. Even the mind is full of faults. Therefore, when one is fixed in love and serving the Lord, digested and we don't even know it, similarly, the material mind and intelligence is also dissolved by digestive process. When one is always engaged in viewing the form of the Lord, either directly or within. And Krishna within helps the living entity by helping him, by purifying and giving knowledge from within by which the living entity can come to him. So, to look to the positive, to always reach out for the positive, that is actually the philosophy upon which Krishna consciousness is based. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayed. Sarvi vidi nishedai shur, suritore vakinkara. Rupa Goswami gave that principle as the principle upon which the preachers of this Krishna consciousness movement shall operate. And that principle is very simple. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayed. Somehow or another, get the person's minds to be attached to Krishna. Then later on, the gradual introduction of the rules and regulations may take place. But somehow or another, just get them attached to Krishna. Even if they make unlimited faults, just get them to chant Hare Krishna. Just get them to think about Krishna. Just get them to see Krishna. Because just by contacting Krishna, gradually, more and more, all of the good things will become manifested more and more. One will see all the good things. By emphasizing the positive aspects, one becomes very much inspired to go on. And when one emphasizes the negative aspects, one becomes totally overwhelmed in depression. No human being likes to all the time hear about the negative things. He wants to get into the positive things. Of course, don't become the ostrich with the head in the ground. As soon as something negative comes, run away screaming, ah! Yeah. Sometimes we have to stand and face those things too. But one should, in dealing with others, and in one's own life too sometimes, he has to inspire himself also by seeing the good. If you only see negative in others, you become depressed. If you only see negative in yourself, you also become depressed. One has to see the good in others. Then he becomes enlivened. When he's enlivened, then it's all right. And don't help others just to see only their bad qualities. They should see their good qualities too. That will also emphasize it. Just like there's two ways when somebody's making a bad choice. You can just tell him, this is a very bad choice you're making. Or you can say like this, it's a bad choice you're making. It's simply based on your senses. You're just a sense gratifier. Then that person will automatically go, what are you saying? This is nonsense. And he'll do it anyway. Stubborn, dog stubborn. Or you could say, I'm sure this decision you are making is not based on sense gratification, because you are very elevated, and you would never make a decision on the basis of your senses. Then the person becomes very embarrassed, because now he's thinking of himself as elevated. And he realizes, well, that's a pretty nasty thing I'm just trying to do here. That's purely based on my senses. So he says, yes, yes, then walks away and then does it the right way. Just to live up to the expectations. Therefore, the creation of very high expectations is a technique to bring the fallen to a higher platform. That's why in Krishna consciousness, we always have high expectation. That's why we always hear about the histories of great souls in the Srimad Bhagavatam. High expectation. So that we can reach forward, reach higher to this expectation, to attain that stage. Not that we give the mundane histories. Yeah, well, this devotee is not very advanced. He's only so advanced. I mean, you could attain that stage after rolling out of bed, or this stage here, this is a little bit more advanced, but that's not so advanced. You can fall down from that platform too. We don't talk about such things. We're not concerned about such things. We look for the highest stage, so that we know we have to go forward to reach out to that highest stage of realization. And when coming to that high stage of realization, then we are very inspired. Even if one is not able to reach it fully, immediately, he's always got a goal to work towards, a goal of purification, a goal of action. He knows what he has to do, and he has to get there. Not that he sets his sights low and becomes very satisfied. I've gotten a little purified. That's good enough. Okay, finished for this lifetime. No. We never make such a statement that, okay, this is good enough. You've never heard anyone say that this level of purification, which is not the topmost level, is good enough. All right, you're somewhat purified, that's good enough. You never hear such a statement. You always hear, reach out, try to become fully Krishna conscious. That's why in these classes we talk about full Krishna consciousness. We don't talk about good enough stage. There's no such stage as good enough. The only thing that's good enough is when you're situated at the lotus feet of the Lord in Goloka Vrindavan. That's good enough. And that is good enough. And any other stage is not good enough. And you'll never hear anybody being satisfied with that, unless he's a fool. Therefore, we're pushing. Go back home, back to Godhead. Don't get stuck anywhere on this process due to false ego or false pride or enviousness or fault-finding tendency or lust. Don't get hung up anywhere. Keep moving forward. Move forward. You're only going to be satisfied when you're situated at the lotus feet of Krishna in your original spiritual form. Keep that in mind. Don't be satisfied just because one is a big shot. Don't be satisfied just because one is famous. I'm the biggest Sankirtan man in the whole of Sweden. All 8 million people of it. Oh, big deal. Yeah. Just like in Denmark, Bhakti Bhushan Swami went there. Denmark, all 5.75 million people. Big, big place, right? And then he mentioned that in Buenos Aires there's 12 million people. Just in one city. So, even though one may be a big fish in a small pond, one should not start considering himself very big. Because you put that so-called big fish in a big pond and he becomes a little guppy, a little tiny, little nothing fish. So one should understand there's nothing to be attached to in this material world. Not even if you're a big, big anything. Compared to Krishna, we're all little, tiny, teeny, little nothings. Teensy, teensy, teensy. Who can accept that? We always think of ourselves as big, big. I'm a big, big brain. I'm a big, big Sankirtan man. I'm a big, big leader of men. I'm a big, big this and that. So many big bigs. You have so many big bigs you can't even walk through the door. That's why the temple room gets sometimes too crowded and packed up, because there's so many big bigs in it. You can't have kirtan bouncing off of each other, big, big. So when there's so many big bigs, doesn't that make one think that actually nobody's big, big? They're all the same? Yeah. If you have a whole bunch of frogs all blowing their cheeks out, big, big, does that make them big frogs? No. One little pin just comes, poop, just poof. That is the problem in this material world. Everybody's blowing themselves up in such a way, but then as soon as there's a little pin of the material energy, which comes and just pops that balloon and Therefore, one should be very careful not to place himself in this artificial position of having to maintain himself as big, big anything. We should be little humble devotees. I know that sounds nice, but that's the hardest thing in the whole universe. To be a simple, humble devotee of Lord Krishna. Practically speaking, is the hardest thing in the whole universe. Because it's against the whole current of the whole material existence to be a humble devotee of the Lord. Everybody wants to be the Lord himself. Everybody wants to be the master himself. Nobody wants to be the humble servant. And that's why we have so many troubles. And that's why one loses taste sometimes in Krishna consciousness. Because he wants to be the greatest. And everybody else wants to be the greatest. So therefore nobody will accept you as the greatest, and you become frustrated, and then everybody's pointing at everybody, you this, that, the other thing, fighting, and fall down. Therefore, if one is a humble, sincere devotee, he's got 100% chance to go back home, back to Godhead. And if one is a big, he's got very little chance. He's got a chance, but it's not so big, so long as he's big. Because there's always the pin possibility. And believe me, there are plenty of pins in this material world ready to pop your balloon. Yeah. One may be lifted up on the winds of Krishna's mercy, but every now and then a storm of Maya comes and forces that balloon down to the ground where all those pins are waiting. And pop goes the balloon of one's illusion, where one was so big, now he's just so little. Yeah, sometimes laying like a wreck of plastic on the side there. So although it may sound funny, it's actually very, very important to become humble. I say become humble. I don't say stay humble. First you become humble, then you stay humble. To become humble is tough. To stay humble is not that difficult. Because after all, when you see how our position is here in this material world, in fact, we are small. In fact, we are not that great. And in fact, Krishna is so much greater. How can we possibly ever present ourselves before the Lord as anything but his humble servant? How can anybody who actually has intelligence in mind and heart actually present himself before the Lord as very great? He'll understand Krishna is so great. He's doing everything everywhere. I may try to do some small thing somewhere. What is that? If I can accomplish anything, that's because he is making it happen. That's because Krishna is helping this to go on. Without him, I'm nothing. We've all seen it. If you're a big Sankirtan man, and as soon as you think yourself big, then Krishna immediately withdraws a little mercy, and there you are, flat on your face on the street. Everybody walking over your head. Nobody caring about you. Yeah. Just like one may think himself big authority, and then runs around and tells this and that, the other thing. As soon as Krishna withdraws a little mercy, immediately, nobody going to listen to you anymore. We are made of Krishna's mercy. That's all we are. Whatever mercy is there, coming from the Lord, that's what we are. Now, somebody may have a good brain. Somebody may have good skills. That's good. Then Krishna says, Nimitta matram bhavya savya sachin. Just like Arjuna had the skill, he knew how to fight with arrows. Savya Sachin means specifically, he's a best archer, expert archer. Therefore Krishna told him, Nimitta matram, you become my instrument. I've chosen you because you're good at what you do. Now you do it for me and become perfected and win your kingdom. That's humility. One may be very equipped with all kinds of facilities according to intelligence or skills, but when he uses those abilities and skills in the service of the Supreme, they become perfected. Therefore, Krishna says, just become my instrument. And Krishna will give so much help. So much help will be there. There's no need to be puffed up. When one is Krishna's humble servant, he'll get everything. Krishna will take care of you. Therefore, there's no need to have to take up some artificial position, to build one's boundary walls all around, to maintain his situation. It's not required. Krishna will do. Krishna will take care of you. Therefore, we should be very nicely engaged in Krishna's service. Depending on Krishna, in great humility and love. And then, everything will work out very nicely. That is a fact. Have faith in that. That's for sure. And then, when his natural love starts to come out, one will pour, his whole consciousness will pour towards Krishna, flow towards Krishna. Just flow towards Krishna. One will not even be able to stop it if he was foolish enough to even think of trying. His consciousness will just flow towards the lotus feet of the Lord, like the Ganges flows towards the sea. Are there any questions about this theme? Yes. Yes, in India, there are very poor devotees who, on the beaches, or something like that, on the earth, they will prepare a form of sand, a bas relief, And they will worship that form. They will put some, if they have some, let's say flower petals or even some glitter or something, they will make form like that. Bas relief. You know what that is? So it's with the back is flat, and then the form comes out like this. So they will make that with their hands in sand. Form of the Lord, very nicely. And then perform worship and offer maybe a banana or a coconut like this. And then, of course, you can't maintain that form. It's just sand. The water will come or the wind will come. Rain will come. So therefore, you cannot ask Krishna to stay there all the time. So you request Krishna, you come now, you can, please, this is not a proper form for you to stay in. I'm finished the worship. Yes, that's a really delicate balance, isn't it? Grandfather Bhishma and Dronacharya, because they didn't stop or even object to Dronacharya when he was doing something wrong. Dusasan, when he was stripping naked Draupadi in the assembly of the Kauravas, they also were to be destroyed. So therefore we understand the principle that if one doesn't stop something which is very wrong, or try at least, he is also guilty. So there is a form of fault finding which is good, and that's for those who are higher authorities, or those who are learned personalities. That is even why we have sannyasis in this Krishna consciousness movement. Actually, they're supposed to go around and preach from temple to temple, place to place, and when they find something which is spiritually not up to the standard, they're supposed to correct it. Now, this is not fault-finding in the same sense. This is assisting in spiritual affairs, because unless the standard is met, you can't advance, or your advancement is slowed up. Therefore, that's part of the spiritual program. Therefore, one must say. But if you don't know much, and you start criticizing others, then you get yourself in big trouble. And sometimes it's better not to say than to say. Let's say somebody does something wrong, temporary thing. One has to understand there's a difference between the chronic and the acute. If something, in medicine, something which is acute is something which happens immediately, and you have to deal with it fast. Like if you get a heart attack all of a sudden, this is an acute attack. Then, if you have just a heart problem, doesn't beat properly, that's called chronic. That's going on. That which is acute may not be immediately dealt with in all cases. In medicine, sometimes it is, sometimes not. But in the devotee's life, it may be better not to just make a big deal out of something which just happened. But if something is chronically going on, then you have to do something about it before it gets burned into the circuits as an eternal thing. So one has to have discrimination like that. Therefore, if you see something wrong, better you go to authorities who are in the position to change it. Not that we create big political parties and there's rallies going this side, that side. Stop this thing, and everybody's making their campaigning and then collecting signatures on each side. We don't do like that. When we see something wrong, we go to the higher authorities and they correct it. That's all. That's the method. Politics, democracy, factionalism in spiritual life is very bad. I couldn't actually hear the last few words. They are the most materially contaminated. Pure demon is not a term we used. It was just in terms of an example yesterday. Demons are not pure anything. they're completely contaminated. But there is a very special state by which a demon, for instance, may be so much absorbed in Krishna, in hatred, that he becomes fully Krishna conscious. But it's called unfavorable. It's not favorable. It's unfavorable. Therefore, Kamsa, for instance, was fully Krishna conscious, but it was unfavorable. Therefore, he's not the example that we should follow. But he became fully Krishna conscious and was granted liberation by Krishna. So they also can develop that absolute platform by all the time thinking of Krishna in intense hatred. Narada Muni glorifies that. He says, in his opinion, he thinks that one can never attain such an intense attraction to Krishna as he can, as through hatred. Because that's a very intense thing. Of course, Prabhupada says in the purport, this is Narada's natural humility. Well, everybody's at a different level of consciousness. Some persons are ready to hear, and they're not casual about it at all. They really want to hear, and they listen very carefully, and they ask good questions. So there are a lot of those persons around. We're meeting them more and more in our preaching lately. There's another group who aren't interested yet, but if they hear you talk, they become interested. They're not on the path of knowledge yet. But when they hear you talk, they realize there's something to that. And they're also very good to preach to. There are other persons who are not even yet so advanced, but if you prepare them in the right way, then when certain circumstances come, they will also flood to Krishna consciousness. That is what we are doing right now in general, with this book distribution and everything. We're preparing fertile seeds. Those who want knowledge, they immediately get it in those books. Those who didn't really know they did, but as soon as they hear it, they're very interested, they read the books too. And those who are in the stage of preparation, they get the books and they see, that's nice. And when something happens to them, then they go and they read it. Then there's some impetus. So we also preach in that way for preparing such persons. You can also speak to them in a special way. You can speak to them in general terms, not very pushy. And you can also explain to them, yes, you have seen others have experienced like this. And therefore, it is because like this, and you should surrender to Krishna in such cases like this. Then they may not see it in their own example, but later on, they may see it in their own example, and then take up that instruction again. We have seen some persons just see a program and walk away. Then later on, they see a devotee with a book, and they say, actually, this is just what I need. I just had this experience and I heard that program a long time ago and actually I want that book. We have seen like that. So you can prepare the ground. It's like on the farm sometimes we just plant some green manure to make the land better in the future so that it'll be able to grow very nicely. Why trick? You can just request. That's not a trick. If you do a business deal with somebody and he makes money, is that a trick? If you do a business deal with somebody and he makes money, is that a trick? No. If you help somebody become Krishna conscious, even he's not really aware of that, is that a trick? No. That's benefit. That's mercy. We don't call it a trick. Yes, you can define. We say mercy. We can engage engage the whole universe. We'll just turn everybody over to demigods. We can engage everybody somehow or another in Krishna's service. Even if they don't even want to have anything to do with Krishna's service. If you're in charge of a government, for instance, it doesn't really matter if some other persons have different ideas. They can do what they want to do. That's all right if it's restricted or just kept in a certain way. And then you take the taxes and you build a huge temple to Krishna and you induce everybody to come by tricks. We can engage everybody somehow or another. There's always a way to engage people. Really, really understand yourself? Others what? Oh, position. Yes. You can't really understand the advancement of others until you are at least on the Majjhimadhikari platform. From that platform, then it's possible to see, oh, he's superior, he's inferior, he's on equal level. From the Prakrita Bhakta platform, you can't understand, because on that platform you see everybody is useless, except yourself and the spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, from that platform you can't see. From the middle class platform, then you can see. You can see, oh, yes, this person is a neophyte. And this person is very highly advanced. Then one can see, because he's got a little clarity of vision. So one has to get to that middle platform. All right, Hare Krishna.